Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Worldviews. Today, I'm joined by Craig McNeil. He is the creator of the YouTube channel Fight the Flat Earth. Craig is best known for challenging flat Earth claims and a wide range of conspiracy theories using science, skepticism, and a sharp sense of humor. What started as a response to flat Earth misinformation has grown into a broader critique of how false beliefs spread online, covering everything from chemtrails and climate change denial to pseudoscience and internet conspiracy culture. Craig, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, very nice
Of
introduction there.
We do our best here. So first of all, I want to say I discovered you because I was watching you debate, at least some of your debate with Rachel Wilson, a modern day debate.
Yeah, that was certainly an interesting one.
Yeah, that was back in October over if feminism was good or bad for society, I think what the topic was. But
Yeah,
I guess
November.
first,
Yeah.
how was that whole experience going to modern day debate? I always enjoy talking to people about their experiences debating on that platform.
Well, I've been on working with modern day debates for many years. I've probably got maybe 50, 60 debates on the channel. And that was my second time going out to America to debate live. And it was a lot of fun. Always nerve wracking, especially a live audience like that. And certainly when Rachel and Andrew are the big pillars of the people. So the 95% of the audience were hostile against me. So it was interesting.
Yeah, do you? Because I'm always fascinated because people go on there, they go at it verbally, aggressively for hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But what about the after stuff? Do you guys go out for Applebee's together or what?
Well, we certainly did have some drinks during the time in Nashville. The night before, actually, Andrew had rented out Garth Brooks' bar, Friends in High Places, with an open bar and food. And I think that was a ploy to get me drunk before I debated his wife, personally. And then after the debates on Sunday, there was a bunch of drinks in the hotel lobby. It was a generally a friendly atmosphere, but I don't think I'd go out drinking with flat earthers, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get to that for sure. I also want to ask you too, because I was on during that debate. You said that I thought this was kind of funny. It was something to do with you said that men need women, and without women, men would just go off and just fail throughout their lives. Is that something that you said? Is that kind of
Yeah, I always say that behind every great man, there's a woman with her arms folded. Um, and I've been married for close to 20 years, and I know for a fact that my wife has stopped me doing many stupid things and encouraged me to be a better person. Um, so I think that women are generally the smarter ones, but they do it behind the scenes.
you think for the most part women are smarter than men?
I think so. I think men are driven by ego and can make stupid decisions based on that. And I think women are generally the more level-headed, rational ones. Um, at least that's my experience in having a wife for nearly 20 years and being someone that stands up for feminism. I see men being stupid, saying stupid things, pushing stupid ideas, whereas the women are the ones that are standing at the back going, "Are you sure about that? Do you want to really think what you're doing there?"
So would you say, like, when it comes to men and intelligence, it's more top heavy, but once it gets towards the average, it's kind of like men are lesser than women from an IQ standpoint, just because
I don't
inventions throughout
not
history.
necessarily like IQ, book smart, but I just think like world wise, women control what the men do. At least if they do control what the men do, if they stand behind them with their arms folded, tutting when a man's about to do a stupid thing, it makes a man think a couple of times before doing it.
I see. Okay, cool. I just want to talk about that for a little bit. But for you, what was your upbringing like? How did Craig grow up in, I assume, the paradise of Scotland?
No, I was raised in England, in Bristol, um, and pretty normal upbringing. Two sisters, mum and dad. Typical nuclear family. Um, I was, I guess, considered a bit of a prodigy, and pushed forward at school a lot and things like that. And then did my university relatively early and joined the military and stuff. So I think a pretty normal upbringing, but with a lot of pressure to excel.
Mm. Where that pressure, like pressure from your family or pressure from society?
Pressure from family, pressure from my school. My school wasn't a great school. It was known as a pretty bad school, and there was only a few people there that were probably going to do any good. So the school kind of focused on us a lot, which made me feel constantly pressured to perform, as well as I could. And I always felt like if I didn't do the best, then I would be looked down on. So I always felt a massive pressure to be the best.
Yeah, and what was the timeline leading up to you creating the YouTube channel?
I'd I was in the Navy for many years, and I got injured and came out, and I've got 2 degrees, physics and nuclear engineering, um, and I was disabled, and I even after leaving the Navy because I was injured, I still tried to work for many years as a wind farm developer, but when my injuries got too bad, I had to stop working, and I was extremely bored and depressed, and honestly, I just came across Flat Earth by accident um, on a Facebook group, Nathan Thompson's Facebook group, and then met a flat earther in real life, which made me think, wait, these people actually exist. And at first, I just thought it was kind of a joke. But then I realized that there's so many vulnerable people that fall for the uh, lies that flat earth grifters push that I might be able to push back against it. And I kept showing my wife, like, hey, look at this stupid thing this flat earther is saying. And she was basically, look, I don't care. You're smart. Start a YouTube channel and debunk it. So I did.
Ooh, okay. So how was do you remember your first debate that was like?
My very first debate was with a guy called Flat Out Hero, and it was a very aggressive debate because he was aggressively ignorant, refusing to let me speak, and I hadn't had any experience in debating, so it was quite a lively, aggressive debate. But quite soon, I figured out that maybe just screaming and shouting and calling them an idiot wasn't the best way forward, and I moved into more trying to calmly debunk their nonsense. But it's very hard to talk to people like flat earthers because they don't understand how conversations work. You're not allowed to get through a sentence without them interjecting and shouting and stopping you in the middle of the thought. So I decided after maybe 20, 30 debates that I'm going to play them at their own game. And I set the rule that if a flat earther comes into debate and speaks to me nicely and has a decent conversation, I'll do the same. But if they come in and they be an ignorant, aggressive moron, then I will do the same, but 10 times worse.
What would you say I guess, based on your debate record, the conversion rate from flat earthers that become, I guess, regular earthers between before and after the debate show?
I mean, I'd say there's at least 100 people that have got back to me and been like, okay, I was wrong. A few have even asked me to remove the debates because they were so embarrassed about the things that they were pushing. Um, and, I've had maybe 1,500 debates. So it's not a massive conversion rate because ignorance is a very hard thing to break through, especially when there's so much nonsense online that, the rabbit's holes get deeper and deeper and deeper, and you might feel like you're bringing someone back, but then you speak to them the next time and they're back down the rabbit hole after watching another Eric Dubay video. Um, the fact that some do come round, I feel makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, what are even because I imagine there's probably 2 or 3 of the top arguments they hit you with that they think are incredibly hard to debunk. What are those, like, 3 that are like, "Oh, here are the ones that are undefeated when it comes to argumentation?"
The biggest one that they always say is an aggressively ignorant statement that water finds its level, which is technically true because water is a great level, but level doesn't mean flat. And water is like every single bit of matter in the universe and just reacts to forces acting upon it. The reason water is level is because we've got gravity on Earth and it pulls water down. So at every point on the Earth, it's a level surface, but that level surface on Earth is curved. But because flat earthers look at the world in such small chunks, they just see, oh, that water looks flat, therefore level is flat. And because water's level and there's so much water, the earth must be flat. But that's an aggressive ignorance of physics, and a lack of understanding of the scale of the Earth, and just repeating what we call their papa flurfs have said, like Eric Dubay and Dearth, who just constantly say these mantras of, well, water's level, therefore the Earth is flat. But it's wrong on so many levels. It's using the word incorrectly in the context, and so you'll find that there's waves of flat earthers that will come in and just say those things, even though it's been debunked over and over and over and explained over and over and over what water actually does and why it does what it does.
Yeah. What about the whole? Because I think I once knew a woman who was a flat earther for a little bit, and I was trying to explain how many people would have to lie for the flat Earth
Hmm. Everyone.
conspiracy to be true, and it's outrageous how
Yeah.
many people have
Every
to lie.
teacher, every boat captain, every pilot, every person in government, everyone with an ounce of intelligence, everyone that works for a space agency, everyone that works with satellites, everyone that makes maps, every air traffic controller, every mathematician, they'd all have to lie and they'd all have to be on it. Um, you know, and it is insane, but flat earthers are convinced that there's some secret cabal controlling the world, that Freemasons have taken over and co-opted the education system to force the globe upon you. Um, and it's very hard to explain to them that so many people would have to be lying, especially when so much industry around the world relies on the fact that the Earth is a globe. Pilots calculate their routes with a great circle route and using the Vicenti formula, which takes into account the spherical and oblateness of the Earth. And you have to explain that all these people doing their job would have to lie to everybody.
Yeah, I am confused what the counter would be, because it sounds like even with flat earthers, the pro to the belief of flat Earth, or not even a pro, I guess, but because people usually think, okay, what you believe in the flat Earth, and that's kind of like it stops there. But it sounds like if you believe in the flat Earth, you also believe in this sort of heavier conspiracy theory that there's these powers that be that are pushing this agenda
Hmm.
for X, Y, or Z reason. What are those reasons they're pushing this agenda then? I assume some is financial, some is for power, but what are the, I guess, specifics?
There's a few different groups of flat Earth. The thing is with flat Earth is none of them agree with each other. There's no cohesive model. There is many different sects of flat Earth. There's what we call the religious flirfs, who will misuse the Bible or the Quran to say that the Earth is flat. And in their case, it's because we're trying to hide God. We're trying to hide God's creation. I don't know why God would only create a little footstool dome. That seems like a puny God to me. Then there's the flat earthers that aren't necessarily religious, that just think it's about control and about money and about, being in charge of society. And somehow, for some reason, telling everybody the Earth's a globe makes them in control. Then there's the flat earthers that just think that everyone else is stupid. And because everyone else is stupid, they can't see the truth that the Earth is flat. There's many other like versions of flat Earth that kind of go off from those ones, but I think that's the main kind of arguments that you get about why they would lie.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, I was Googling because I didn't have this number in my mind, the amount of people that are flat earthers in America, and it said I don't think this is true. This stat seems a little stretched out, but it said 5 to 10% of people in America are flat earthers. Do you think that rings true?
Yeah, well, those studies are done in like limited areas. Like I think if you polled every single person in America, it would be less than 0.01%. But when you take say you go to an area of America that's not that well educated and poll 10,000 people from there, then you might get a skewed result. None of these studies or, claims cover everyone in America. Just, that's what every kind of poll does. They get a small group and extrapolate from there. So I don't think it's a true reflection of the answer. Honestly, I think there's probably less than 10,000 people on Earth that think the Earth is flat.
And would you say, because surely in like 10, 15 years, that number is going to dwindle down pretty significantly. Like this can't be a belief system that's held for the next 20, 30 years, right?
I don't know. The aggressive ignorance is worrying. I've always made the joke that in a few hundred years we'll be living on Mars in domes, and there'll be people on Mars going, "Don't be stupid. We didn't come here on a spaceship from Earth. Mars is clearly flat." I think the movie Idiocracy is becoming more and more like reality.
Yeah, because flat Earth for you was basically sort of a beacon to discover this greater world of people that have higher ignorance towards numerous subjects and conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
I guess what belief outside of flat Earth did you discover that disturbed you the most that people really believe in? I guess a wide population of people, that is.
Uh, Obviously, there's like moon landing deniers and things like that. But the one that really shocked me was to find out there's people that think that jet fuel is a hoax. That
That
planes
jet
don't.
fuel's a hoax?
Yeah, yeah. And there's a large portion of flat earthers that will say, "Oh, there's no such thing as jet fuel. How can the planes carry that much fuel? They just use compressed air and electromagnetic levitation." For some reason, they think that they're being lied to about the fuel that goes into aeroplanes. Um, and that honestly blew my mind. You can sit in an airport and sit in the plane and watch them fuel the plane. I can show them pictures of the inside of wings and the size of the tanks that hold the fuel, but they still push the nonsense that jet fuel is a hoax. One guy, Nathan Thompson, even goes as far as to say that F1 cars don't use fuel; they use compressed air. And that one blows my mind. Why would they lie to us about jet fuel? It, like, but I'll tell you the funniest one that I've heard, and it's to do with the moon, right? I spoke to quite early on in my debates a flat earther who calls himself Flat Earth Jesus, and he told me that the moon was dug out of the Grand Canyon by giants, melted into quartz, and whilst it was cooling, they filled it with helium. That explains the craters; it was bubbles popping, and then it was put in the sky to mock us for worshipping the sun. And then he laughed at me because I tried to explain that it was Earth's natural satellite.
Wow. Wait, and he was uh, how many of these people are for real, though? This is just like you described that, so I'm like, is this like a satire thing at
No,
some
no,
point?
he is one of the genuine flat earthers. Uh, he um, he calls himself Iron Horse now. If you ever want to check out his YouTube channel, it is full of absolute crazy nonsense. Um, but to answer the question, how many of them are real? About 15%. I think the majority of people that you find that are saying the Earth is flat, especially on Facebook and stuff, are trolling or engagement farming, or just flat out lying. Someone like Dave Weiss, Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, he has a Flat Earth app, which is you have to pay to be on, and there's a monthly subscription and stuff. And I'm convinced that he knows the Earth isn't flat, and he is just doing it because that's his revenue stream. And he has convinced the gullible that the Earth is flat, so they constantly give him money.
Oh, I can totally see that being a thing. That sounds that sounds like the only reason one should believe the flat Earth is true is for financial gain in that sort of specific manner.
But it can be hard to tell because you'll get what we call pose, who are pretending to say the Earth is flat, but they say such ridiculous things. It's very hard to separate from the actual flat earthers because the actual flat earthers also say such ridiculous things. So sometimes it can take a while before in a conversation I twig and I go, "Oh, this guy's not for real." And then you get little cues from body language and smirks and things like that. And it you I think it has come down to the fact that maybe only about 15% of the flat earthers that me and other debunkers talk to are actual genuine flat earthers.
Are some of these people so loyal to the idea that the flat Earth is true that you think that if you brought them to space and say that they saw the Earth, would they still make up something in their heads to convince themselves that what they're
Yeah, they'd
seeing is
say
not ac
NASA put contact lenses on them. They came in the night before and knocked them out, and then put contact lenses in their eyes and convinced them that the Earth was a globe, or that the windows in the spaceship are curved to make you think it's a globe. I make the joke that you could strap a flat earther to the front of a Suez rocket, send them into space, and they'd come back and say that that didn't happen because the Earth's flat and they know it's flat. There are some that are so deep in it that no matter what you say, they will just say, "Well, read the Bible. The Earth that says the Earth's flat, therefore you're an idiot," or something along those lines. Now, of course, we all know the Bible says nothing about the Earth being flat. That's one of the things that we we have to argue with them about quite a lot. There's a group of flat earthers that will push that the Bible is a flat earth book. And I have to explain, well, it was written by sheep herders several thousand years ago that lived in the Middle East and knew nothing about the shape of the earth.
Yeah, yeah, which I guess they would push back and say they received divine revelation about the earth being flat that wasn't particularly even listed in the Bible, maybe?
Yeah, they will take the words in the Bible, and even though nowhere in the Bible does it say the earth is flat, they take things like the firmament mentioned in the Bible, or foundations, or God's footstool, which are obviously metaphors, right? And actually, when you go back and you look at the word firmament, it comes from the Hebrew word rakia, which literally means expanse rather than dome. But you have to realize that they are so indoctrinated that anything they read will back up their claims. Not just the Bible, but they'll look at NASA documents. And NASA will do things like use modeling simplifications and assume a flat Earth because it's simple. We don't need to say the Earth's a globe to model how an aircraft works because it flies level to the ground. So when you do modeling simplifications, you can say things like, well, it's over a flat, non-rotating Earth with an aircraft of constant mass with unchanging weather. And we know those things aren't true. We know an aircraft doesn't have unchanging mass. We know an aircraft's not rigid. We know that there is never unchanging weather. And, but because the words are there, they will take it totally out of context. And NASA have said that the Earth is flat, except of all the times that NASA go to space and show a globe, of course. NASA only says what they want when they can cherry pick certain words.
Wow. Have you debated a flat earther that actually seemed intelligent or logical outside of the flat earth claims?
No, there isn't any. Um, Austin Whitsitt, who has been driven off the internet recently, would claim that he is the smart one because he can say a lot of words really fast, right? And if you listen to Austin without understanding what's being said, he can sound smart because he can say a lot of big words and he can say them really fast, but they have no meaning. There's no actual substance behind what he says. It's just word salad. And when you push him on what the meaning of what he says is or where he gets the information, there's nothing behind it. But again, if you listen to him and you're not really familiar with stuff, he can sound intelligent and he thinks he's intelligent. He even he went on Tim Davidson's podcast, Timcast, whatever it is, and told him that, oh, no one was actually worthy enough to debate me ever. It's pure Dunning-Kruger and arrogance. He told me the reason that there is separate stars that rotate in the north and the south, because you got the North Pole and the North Celestial Star and the South Celestial Point with counter-rotating stars, different sets of stars. But he told me that the reason that is if you draw on a window and someone's looking at it from the other side, it draws the other side. And I kind of had to explain that at no point when you're flying north to south do you go through a window, and it doesn't explain why there's different stars. But he'll say these things with such confidence that people listening to him will fall into it. And when you have people that aren't very smart and maybe slightly gullible, that is absolute proof for them. Oh, listen to that smart guy say this thing.
Okay, I see. Do you What about you also debated the moon landing, I imagine, plenty of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, quite a few times, yeah.
Is that one, at the very least, do you see why the other side would come to that conclusion?
Yeah, there is. You can look at a lot of the stuff from NASA and the moon landings and go, oh, well, that doesn't look right. But then that's, again, ignorance of the equipment that was used and why things would look like that. And, they don't understand things like, well, why haven't we gone back to the moon? One of the biggest things for them is that the fact that it's taken 50 years to go back to the moon. And that's absolute proof for them that it was fake, because they would keep doing it. And we have to explain that, well, after the Apollo 17, they kind of stopped most of the funding to NASA. The factories that built the rockets were disassembled, and they had less money of the federal budget, and so they focused on other things like the International Space Station. But the fact that we haven't gone back to the moon is absolute proof to them. So I have to explain that, well, you couldn't go out and just buy a Model T Ford right now because the factories that made those are gone, So the technology doesn't exist anymore. And technology doesn't advance unless there's constant investment in it. Only recently, in the past couple of decades, has space travel become, much more advanced because of the investment and research in it, mainly from private companies.
Is it possible? I don't know if you've been confronted with this theory with the moon landing. Is it at all possible that when they were up there, they saw aliens?
Uh, I don't know. Probably not. I don't think that aliens could come here. I'm pretty convinced that out in the universe there is life because all the ingredients for life exist everywhere. But traveling faster than light is impossible. Um, and if aliens had been here, I don't think they would keep it secret. There would be no reason for that, for them to keep it secret. And I doubt that we will ever encounter anything other than some kind of AI. I think if we ever meet aliens, it would be they've sent a probe out that has a computer in, very much like we are considering doing with Proxima Centauri. They're just thinking, well, what if we just send some robotic probes out there that take like 10 years at 20% the speed of light? I don't think that the technology or the physics would ever allow for faster than light travel. So even if aliens do exist, which I think they probably do, I don't think we'll ever meet them.
Ooh, interesting. What? So, what's your? Why do you think if they came here, why do you think it would make sense for them to keep it a secret?
Um, why would you travel light years and invest all that time and technology to just hide from the place that you came to? It makes very little sense that an intelligent species that has figured out interstellar travel would then just keep it a secret and just hide in the shadows. Um, you know, I think if humans went to another planet, we would certainly introduce ourselves if we found life on that planet. And I just don't see any reason why an intelligent species that has figured out how to travel the vast distances of space would hide from everybody. It would be a pointless exercise.
Yeah, I'm always thinking like, have you seen the movie Arrival?
Yeah.
Okay, I always think because they do in that film they do a good job of painting how foreign an alien species could really be. Because sometimes I'm thinking maybe we put too much of our human ambitions into the minds of like foreign alien species. Therefore, we think that the reason why they can't exist or the reason why they can't do these things is because we wouldn't do them ourselves. But sometimes I feel like maybe that's not an accurate depiction because you never know. Because these are aliens. They could be doing whatever they really want. And they could be completely separate from any type of known ambition or human experience that we would implore for our endeavors if we were put in a similar position as they are. I don't know. I just thought.
I mean, yeah, I see your point, and it is human nature to anthropomorphize things. We put what we are onto everything we see. Um, the if it's like a bug species or whatever, there's still going to be the need to kind of interact with the species that are here. I also don't think that they would be able to hide unless they had like amazing cloaking technology, which is something that, again, I don't really think physics would allow to be a thing. For me, if you're an intelligent species and you're traveling through the universe, what would be the point in hiding? You either want to get the resources or you want to, explore and meet and advance, or, it just seems like a completely pointless exercise to travel across space and then hide.
Yeah. Did you look into the whole I guess the hearings in the past few years about the UFOs from like the Tic Tac UFO from 2004
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
do you think
So
those are
I've got a
man-made
friend, Mick West.
vehicles?
Yeah, yeah. So I've got a friend, Mick West, who's a fellow debunker. Also, actually, made the first two Tony Hawk's games. He was the programmer, and he does amazing debunks, and especially of these UFO things. And like the Tic Tac one, right? He explained how, well, it was actually a lot further away than the people were assuming. And the analysis he did of it showed that it was completely normal movements, but because of the perception of it being closer appeared skewed and faster and slower than you would expect. They're UFOs. They're unidentified flying objects, and most of them are probably just drones or other aircraft that are being picked up and viewed in a different way. I don't think there's ever alien spaceships here. There might be secret military craft that maybe can fly a bit faster than we're able to, but I don't think any of them are alien ships. And if you really want to um, go through the details, I would suggest checking out Mick West's YouTube channel.
Yeah, I've heard of him. He's pretty skeptical
Yeah,
about everything.
yeah, and rightly so. He's also an extremely intelligent person. He's created a bunch of things to help us debunk flat earthers, like refraction simulators and stuff that can explain how light travels through different mediums, the atmosphere and water and things like that. If you go to metabunk.org, his website, there's a lot of handy information on there that can explain very basic misconceptions.
Sure. Okay, then. What about, where do you stand on the JFK assassination?
Uh, that's a conspiracy that I could maybe get behind. You know, it, I don't know. There could have been an extra gunman. I don't think that's as out there as something like flat Earth or denying the moon landing or chemtrails or jet fuel not being real. I don't know. I've not done a deep dive on it, but it's a more plausible conspiracy theory than a lot of the nonsense we hear.
Yeah, I guess what other plausible conspiracy theories would you give some type of credence to?
Things like the CIA pushing drugs into black communities and things like that. Those kind of conspiracy theories, I think they could have something behind them. I mean, we all know that governments can lie, and twist the truth and stuff. So, I think there are a lot of conspiracies around what governments have done and said that could be, could have bits of truth behind them. But that's the thing of the internet, right? You can get a little bit of truth and mix it with so much misinformation. It's hard to pick out what is the actual truth. And conspiracy theories grow their own tails of new conspiracy theories and new conspiracy theories that just all muddle together.
Yeah, what do you think is because obviously you're very much into this based on the fact that you do this in a lot of debate formats. What do you think people, when it comes to like misconceptions, what do you think base misconception people have when it comes to those that are deep into the conspiracy theories like this or like flat earthers or anything like that?
Um, well, flat Earth is a misunderstanding of anything physics and maths. Um, they don't understand how the world works. They haven't studied physics, and they will look at things that might be slightly counterintuitive, like how gravity works, and completely misunderstand it. Oh, how can gravity hold all the oceans to the Earth, yet a butterfly can fly? And that is literally just a not understanding how it works because they've never studied it and they don't know the equations and the experiments that show how mass is not just attractive force isn't just one thing. It's this is two different masses and the distance between them. And you have to explain that multiple forces can exist at the same time. Oh, how can a cloud float if gravity is real? You have to explain that buoyancy exists and wind currents exist. And it is just aggressive ignorance, which sometimes can be fixed, but most of the time can't.
Are there any misconceptions you think people have about flat earthers that don't line up?
Yeah. So the whole, I think the if you aren't into the flat Earth and you hear about it, you kind of think of a flat disk in space. With you got Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, they're all round. But no, there's a disk there of Earth that's flat with it. But that's not what flat earthers think. A couple do. I've met a couple that do, but the majority of them think that there's no such thing as space. Earth is just maybe an infinite plane, or there's extra lands outside the ice wall around the edge, which is actually Antarctica. But the general kind of popular view of flat Earth, of just this disk in space, isn't what flat earthers actually will tell you it is.
Because I always thought of flat earth, like when I think flat earth, I think basically the flat earther would think you just take the globe and cut it in half, and that's what they're perceiving.
No,
But
no, yeah,
it's even deeper than that.
yeah, it's deeper than that. Like I said, I think there's ones that think we're in a dome, and there's just water around us, which is generally the religious flirts. There's ones that will say that it's an infinite plane, and it just goes on forever for some reason. And you can go outside of the ice wall and you might find other lands. There's a guy called Dell who runs a channel called Beyond the Imaginary Curve, who has started pushing the idea that Earth rises up at a constant rate, but in a figure of 8. I don't know what it's rising through, of course, but that for him explains gravity, which is ridiculous because it would have to be acceleration, not a constant speed. Um, there's so many there's so many different versions of flat Earth, but none of them are really the popular misconception of flat Earth, and that actually makes flat Earthers very angry. Sorry, excuse me. It makes flat Earthers very angry when you depict them as someone who just thinks of it as a disk in space, because none of them think that space exists.
Hmm. Wow. What do you think? Because being so ingrained in this work, because how old's your YouTube channel, first of all?
7 years.
7 years. How has running this channel, because I assume it's changed your worldview politically, socially, philosophically in ways you didn't expect. I guess what were those ways that sort of changed it?
I've realized that the average person is pretty dumb, and half the world is dumber than that. And I think that's the internet's fault. I think that the internet has allowed the village idiots to make a village of their own. But because they're all together, they reinforce their own beliefs. They pat each other on the back and say, "Oh, well done! You've come up with this idea that obviously destroys the globetards." And it's dealing with the stupidity has really changed the way I think about people. I just think of people as generally pretty stupid now.
Yeah, because I imagine even just because if I was in your shoes, I'd be thinking about that all the time. Like even at the supermarket waiting in line, like people around me don't know, don't hold the same reality as I do. I mean, we see it in the news and politics and stuff like that, that people actually seem to have 2 separate realities or multiple different realities that they're living in on both sides.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone has their own world, um, and these bubbles have appeared. I think in the last 20 years, with the rise of the internet, these bubbles have come out of the stupidity, that people cannot break out of these bubbles, and that is their reality. And you can never convince them that it's actually what it is. They think everything's a lie. So much so, like I told you about the Flat Earth Jesus guy. Another thing that he says is, and I'm not kidding, this is on his YouTube channel, tennis is CGI. When you watch tennis on TV, that's just CGI because they're trying to teach us to believe that CGI is real. Even though there's thousands of people that watch tennis matches live and stuff. No, if you're watching tennis on TV, that's CGI because everything has to be a lie. And that's a way to enforce the lie, to make you think that CGI is real. And that's the kind of bubble that these people live in. So much so that they're convinced that everything has to be a lie, not just the flat earth, climate change, gravity, moon, jet fuel, all these, they have to be lying to you about everything. And I find that dangerous, right? Especially when you've got parents that teach flat earth to kids. Because imagine being a child and thinking that everyone's lying to you. As a kid thinking that everything that everyone says to you is a lie. I think that will be a dangerous way to grow up, to not trust anyone or anything or believe anything about reality, to think that everything is a lie and everyone is lying to you. I think that's a really dangerous and unfair thing to do to a child. It's going to ostracize that child. It's going to make that child, everyone else is going to make fun of that child and stuff. And so it's not just the humor. There is danger to flat earth when they're pushing it to children, especially.
Mm, mm. Yeah, 'cause, it seems to be this type of, like, moral obligation to always challenge false beliefs within society.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with challenging things. I always like to question things, and I always say, don't just believe what you're told. maybe check, but don't ignore the answers. And that's what they do. Flat earthers say they do research, but a flat earther's research is watching another flat earther's YouTube video,
Mm.
or just repeating other flat earth claims, or just searching for flat earth and then going, aha, look what this flat earther said. And it's dangerous because they start with the bias and then look for anything that confirms that bias. No matter what it is, it will confirm that bias.
Yeah. How about for you then? What do you think? I guess what are your most personal unpopular opinions when it comes to anything politically, socially, or philosophically?
I mean, I'm a staunch atheist, and that annoys a lot of people. I think there's zero evidence for a god, um, and that can be an unpopular opinion, especially in the world we're in, where religion is a big part of everyday life. Um, and I think that it's an indoctrination camp a lot of the times, especially when you're doing things like baptizing kids and stuff and saying, "Aha, you must believe in a god to be a good person," and things like that. And people don't like when I point out those kind of things. I guess you could call me left leaning in my politics, which is very controversial nowadays to even mention politics. I mean, I started to debate a lot of right wing stuff, but I found it extremely toxic, so I got out of that. Um, I'm an ally to trans and gay and lesbian, and that can be unpopular among, well, especially the right wing crowd, I guess.
Yeah. What's your because but you wouldn't say you're so into atheism to where if something supernatural happened to you that was a clear divine experience that you would be turned off by it, or you would say no, atheism has to be true.
I would look for an explanation. I wouldn't instantly just go, "Oh, well, it must be a miracle."
Sure.
I would, I'm scientifically minded, and anything that happens, I would analyze it and test it, and try and replicate it and stuff. And um, when I was younger, I had a weird experience when I was doing a paper round of I thought I'd gone into another dimension and I saw some strange things, right? But I was also under a lot of stress and very tired and things like that. And, that was obviously the explanation. I probably sleptwalked whilst I was doing my paper round. But at the time, I thought I'd experienced something which I guess could be considered supernatural. I thought I'd seen ghosts and stuff, but you know, there is always another explanation. If I could never find an explanation, I would never rule out anything, but I have to have evidence behind something for it to be a conclusion for me. I base everything I do on logic and evidence. And I personally never come across anything that couldn't be explained with the natural world.
Wait, can you detail me what you experienced when you were a paper boy?
So I was maybe 13, and it was a really cold, snowy day. And I would get up at 5 in the morning to do my paper round. The night before, I'd spent most of the night up playing Mortal Kombat 3. Even though my mum told me to turn off the TV, I didn't. I stayed up and played Mortal Kombat 3, right? So I may had a couple hours sleep. I was doing exams. I was tired. I was stressed. And I remember getting a feeling coming over me of like an electric feeling. And then I felt like I was in a different place. It was the streets, but they weren't the streets. And there was these figures that were almost human, but weren't. And they were surprised to see me and they were coming towards me and trying to talk to me. Um, and then after a while, I was back in the normal world and I freaked out and I like went home to my mum and I was crying like, "Mum, what just happened?" But it took a while for me to realize that when you're tired and you're stressed, I was someone that did sleepwalk as a child. So it was obviously, that was the explanation. I didn't fall into a ghost world or another dimension. I was clearly
Yeah.
just sleepwalking whilst I was doing my paper round.
Yeah, because I imagine you haven't had any experiences like that since, like
No,
nothing
no,
close to paranormal or supernatural, anything like that.
no.
Okay. And then what was your theory on are you a Jesus mythicist, or do you think he was just a wise prophet, that kind of thing?
I'm not entirely sure Jesus existed. I mean, I haven't done a deep dive into it. but my research kind of indicates that the majority of the stories in the Bible have been told in previous religions or in previous texts. Um, Maybe there was someone called Jesus that was a good guy, uh, but I don't. I couldn't for 100% say if Jesus actually existed or not. But that's there's a guy called Richard. Oh, I can't remember his name.
Did you have dinner with Richard Carrier during modern day
Richard
debate?
Carrier, yeah. So I met Richard Carrier and had a lot of drinks with him in Nashville. And he kind of explained to me a lot of these things that and where those thoughts came from, because I kind of thought that before I even met Richard Carrier. Obviously, I don't believe the Bible is true. I'm not religious, and I can see the parallels in a lot of previous texts before the Bible existed, which makes me think that maybe it's just stories that have been retold and retold and retold, and there's no hard evidence that Jesus was a real person other than the words in the Bible. And that's I don't think it's something we could ever prove or disprove. Very much like God, I don't think you can ever disprove that God exists, because you know that's something outside the purview of science. In the same way, I don't know if we could ever prove that Jesus existed or was the Son of God. Um, Maybe there was a nice guy around that time. Who knows?
Mm. During because how many debates do you think you've had in your whole life? I guess
On my YouTube channel,
organized debates.
around about 1,500.
1,500. That's a
Yeah.
lot. Okay, so you debated conspiracies, you debated feminism. What are your favorite topics to debate, or even topics you wish you debated more?
Obviously, flat Earth in general is my favorite, because I find the whole thing ridiculous, and I like to counter misinformation. I really like talking about gravity and why that's real, and how we can prove the rotation of the Earth. Um, I like I really like talking about the moon landings, especially with Artemis 2 coming up. And things like chemtrails and jet fuel hoax. I love countering the misinformation that is what I consider very easy to counter. Um, I don't enjoy debating religion as much, because it's such a personal belief. Um, but there's certain things about religion that I will push back on, and but it's not as enjoyable for me.
Who do you think is the smartest person you've ever debated? Or
This
someone that impressed you the most with their intellectual capacity?
Andrew Wilson,
Really?
yeah. Um, he was my first debate in the kind of Christian ethics, secular ethics, and it was a little bit of a system shock, because I'd spent so much time talking to people who are fundamentally stupid. Um, Whereas Andrew isn't necessarily. He holds a lot of beliefs that I entirely disagree with, but he's a very eloquent person. He is extremely good at debating. He knows his topic inside and out. He knows the arguments better than I think anybody else on the planet. And for me, it was a very difficult debate, because I wasn't as well versed in the topic as he was. And it was a very different feeling actually debating someone that had an ounce of intelligence behind them. Even though I disagree with him fundamentally, it was a very eye-opening experience, because it wasn't like talking to someone that struggles to get out of bed and eat their breakfast without digging their eye out of a spoon.
Yeah. You said the topic was secular humanism, that
Yeah,
is good or bad for
which is
society?
better for society, Christian ethics, or secular humanism.
Oh, basically you debated him on what he debated Richard Carrier on
Yeah, yeah.
at modern day debate.
Yeah, I did
Okay.
it in February last year, in New Jersey.
Okay. And during these debates, do you ever, I guess the public ones that is, or maybe even the public ones that are remote as well, do you ever find yourself in a position where you're like, "Oh, shoot, I'm actually wrong about this
Oh yeah,
detail,"
absolutely.
and
And
do you have
that
to
yeah.
and you admit it during it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think you have to. If you want to be an honest person, then if you're wrong, you have to admit it. And uh, um, I'm not, infallible. I can get things wrong. I can say things wrong. I can do maths wrong. And there was a moment in the debate with Andrew where I'd used, I can't even remember exactly what it was, but I'd used a phrase completely out of context and wrong. And Andrew was like, "What are you talking about?" And I had to kind of take a moment. I was like, "Wait, you know what? You're right. I've just completely screwed that up." And I think that's an important thing. If you went on my channel, you'll find a bunch of posts. If you go to my post section, there's quite a few times where I've had to eat crow and be like, "You know what, guys, I was wrong about this." And I think if you're going to be a debater, if you're going to be someone that is trying to come across as someone that is trying to get truth out, then you have to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah, that's something I think lacks a lot in the YouTube debate field that I've noticed, especially, I guess, more so those that can't admit when they lost the debate.
Oh, that's every flat earther forever. I did a debate on Friday against a guy called Brother Sanchez, and I think it was one of the best debates I've ever done. Um, I literally ripped the guy apart in every single part of the conversation. But near the end, he started going, "Yeah, I've just destroyed FTFE," dancing around like a pigeon knocking over the chess pieces and taking a crap on the board. They will, every time you debate a flat earther, they will run back to their echo chamber and scream that they've destroyed a globie. And they don't have. I think that's part of being so low intelligence. They don't have some kind of internal regulation mechanism to realize how stupid they've come across. So they have to say they've won, and they have to force themselves to believe that they've won. Otherwise, they can't continue being a flat earther.
Yeah, I mean, another example of that's pretty much any YouTube comment section under a debate video is
Oh, good Lord.
basically the guy I'm cheering for won. It's like every single time.
Yeah.
It's like, can we at least admit, despite the fact that we think our topic is right, that the person that debated it did not do a good job at debating it?
Yeah.
That should be much more accepted, I feel like.
Yeah. And not every debate I've done brilliantly in. I suffer from chronic pain because of my injuries, and I have systemic disorder because of that. And I can get angry and triggered. And there's sometimes where I'd be like, at the end of the debate, you know what? That was a crap debate for me. And I'll outright admit it. I'll be like, in my next stream, guys, I apologize for that awful performance. I should not have said those things. I should not have been so angry. I got this wrong. I got this wrong. I got this wrong. I'm human. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's an important thing, that you're able to admit when you screwed up. But no flat earther can do that. The only way a flat earther could admit they're wrong is to say that the earth isn't flat. And that's what happens. Jeranism, one of the world's biggest probably the biggest flat earther in the world. We had a few debates, and we were talking, and that we were back and forth in text. And actually, he'd brought up a point, and I was arguing against it. And I was really convinced I was right about this point, something about navigation, right? But actually, Jeranism was right. And I had to admit to him, I was completely wrong about that. And that moment of me saying to Jeranism that I was wrong, actually, I think triggered something for him. And he started realizing that Globers aren't just lying to me. They're actually maybe trying to help me. And then he went to Antarctica in December 2024. I was invited to go as well, but I couldn't because my knee and stuff. A bunch of Globers and flat earthers went to Antarctica and saw the 24-hour sun. And while there, Jeranism had to admit, yeah, I was wrong. The Earth's a globe. Um, you know, Austin Watson,
Have
however,
you
came back even dumber.
had you been to Antarctica before, though?
Yeah, in the Royal Navy, I went to McMurdo Station. I was there for about a week and a half. I didn't really get to see or do anything because it was, I was there for the military.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in the summer
Dang.
either, so I wouldn't have seen the 24-hour sun.
Yeah. Wait, where's your chronic pain come from? What was your injury?
Well, I was trapped by a bit of machinery and left hanging for quite a while, and it screwed up my shoulder and my knee. But I didn't really know about my knee, and I was on so many painkillers for my shoulder that it was masking the problem with my knee. And then one day, it was Boxing Day after Christmas. We were at my father-in-law's for Christmas, and we'd walked home. It was about a mile and a half walk from my father-in-law's to my home, and I was kind of running around with my son, and I kind of like stood awkwardly, and I got a twinge in my knee, and I thought nothing of it. But woke up the next morning, and my knee was, no lie, the size of a watermelon. So I went to hospital, and they were like, "Well, why didn't you get that fixed like 3, 4, 5 years ago?" I was like, I didn't know it was bad. And then it turned out that I'd blown my meniscus like way previously. And for like 5 years, my knee had been grinding itself away, which is now a chronic thing that can't be fixed. So yeah, I suffer from complex regional pain syndrome. And I am currently pushing for an amputation with my leg because I literally cannot use my leg, and it reduces my quality of life so much.
Sorry to hear that, man. That's tough. Goodness
It's life.
gracious.
Yeah.
It's life. Wait, how old are you?
42.
42. Okay. So you have plenty of years of debating flat Earth left.
I hope so, yeah.
Cool. What about well, let's how about this? If debating conspiracy theories and the flat Earth, if all that stuff kind of vanished tomorrow, what do you think would concern you the most about the next wave of misinformation?
The current worry for me is the wave of medical misinformation going around in the world. Like, we've just had in Texas a measles outbreak, a disease we had literally destroyed. We had literally eradicated measles. But in the past 6 months, there's been more cases of measles in Texas than there has been in 25 years. And that is a direct result of anti-vaccination rhetoric. Coming from even the president of the United States, and his medical dude, RFK, whatever he is, that are trying to say that vaccines might be causing autism. Don't take the MMR and stuff. And those kind of rhetorics have become a direct vector for diseases that we had literally got rid of, the measles, polio, that they were eradicated thanks to vaccines, but now they're coming back because of the rise of medical misinformation. So
Mm.
that worries me, and I think is even more important than flat Earth. But unfortunately, it's not really something that I can cover on social media because you get shut down by your platform for mentioning it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you might even want to edit
Yeah.
that out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good actually a good point. I'm not sure if how
Maybe just
good
bleep out the
YouTube is
word
with
vaccine or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, Craig, I appreciate the time. I know the last question here, every guest that we have on here, we always ask him one question for God that you'd ask, knowing that he'd answer right here, right now. What would you ask God?
How dare you?
Oh,
Yeah. My sister was the youngest person in Europe to ever be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. How dare you? Children in Africa have their eyes eaten out by you know disease-ridden insects. That how dare you? If you are almighty and all powerful, how fucking dare you? And I'm not kidding. If God was real and we met, we'd be fighting and I'd throw the first punch.
you throw a punch at God? I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
that's a
hundred
all-powerful
percent.
figure.
Yeah, 100%. If God was real, I would absolutely, even if it meant that I got tormented in hell for the rest of my life, I couldn't morally and ethically not stand up to someone that I would consider a petty bully.
What if the answer he gave you to, I guess, the problem of suffering actually sufficed?
I don't think anything, there's nothing could ever suffice for making a wonderful person like my little sister suffer for her entire life because of multiple sclerosis. There, nothing would ever suffice for the answer why people die of cancer. My mum passed away a few months ago of cancer. My father-in-law is maybe a month away of dying from cancer. There, in my mind, there would be nothing that could ever suffice the suffering that people endure. Good people, when rapists and pedophiles and murderers live happy, healthy lives. Nothing could ever make me think that that was a thing that is a good thing. And that is something that I will take with me forever. And if God is real, he's got some answering to do, I think.
It's not an uncommon statement made on this show. But okay, Craig, appreciate the time. Any final words, pieces of advice, some wisdom for the audience?
Remember, you're not a flat earther. You're not stupid because you're a flat earther. You're a flat earther because you're stupid. Stupidity is not a right. Fight the flat Earth.
Thanks, Greg.
No worries. Thanks.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.